وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع نفوسنا أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الصادقين. الحمد لله الذي جعلنا من المتمسكين بولاية سيدي ومولاي علي بن أبي طالب. اللهم صل على محمد. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. أما بعد، يقول الله في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم: فمثله كمثل الكلب إن تحمل عليه يلهث أو تتركه يلهث. The first of our salawat in honor of Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. The second in honor of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. The third with your loudest voices in honor of Imam Sahib al-Asr wa Zaman. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Respected brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. The verse in question, verse 176 of Surah 7 in the Quran, discusses the fall from grace of one of the scholars of the children of Israel, and acts as a metaphor for the fall from grace of Shuraih al-Qadi, the judge of Kufa who led to the execution of Muslim ibn Aqeel. The question which we are seeking to discuss is a question that allows us to discuss the position of scholars in religious thought. As we know, each and every religion in the world today reveres its scholars, and the idea that they view their scholars as being the beacons of the light of the religion, the banner of the moral virtues of the religion, those who uphold the religion's standpoints and look after its principles. Every religion in the world recommends people to be around their scholars in order that they are able to learn from them, for they recognize the fact that these are the people who uphold the teachings of the religion and who at the same time look after the legacy that the religion was built upon. Therefore, whether it be the religion of Judaism with its rabbis, or the religion of Christianity with its priests, or the religion of Islam with its ulama, you find that there is a special reverence for the scholars in each and every religion. And this reverence isn't only in this world, that the position of the scholar even stretches to the hereafter. And the idea that in this world the scholar is highly revered to the extent that, as Amir al-Mu'mineen states in one quite beautiful line, when he speaks about the teacher, he says, whoever teaches you one letter has become your master. And likewise, if you imagine that a teacher occupies such a position where if they teach you one letter they are like your master, then imagine those scholars who teach you thousands of letters. What type of master position do they occupy? But likewise, we find that the position that they occupy is not only a position of respect in this world, no. It's also a position of respect in the hereafter. Why? Because within Islamic thought, there are three groups of people on the Day of Judgment who will be able to intercede on behalf of humanity and on behalf of God. Who are they? The first group of them are the prophets of God. Why? Because these prophets, of course, gave everything away in order that God's message continued. These prophets were the embodiment of God's message on earth. Whenever people wanted to know about God's mercy, they looked at those prophets. Whenever people wanted to know about God's justice, they looked at those prophets. And therefore, God allows on the Day of Judgment for the prophets to perform shafa'ah, to intercede on behalf of those who have come on that day. The second group of people who are allowed to intercede on the Day of Judgment are the shuhada, the martyrs. Because a martyr's philosophy is a sacred philosophy. It's a unique philosophy. Why? Because a martyr recognizes that he has to die in order that the candle of the light of the religion continues to be lit. That the martyr sees the goals of the religion as being more important than his goals, the aims of the religion as being more important than his aims, and therefore you find that on the Day of Judgment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows them to intercede. Yet the third group of people who are given permission to intercede on the Day of Judgment are whom? Are the scholars. That the ulama on the Day of Judgment are allowed to intercede on all those who have come before them who deserve the intercession on that day. That's why we find the importance of the scholar is found in the idea that the scholar can make or break a community. Many of you here would have met one scholar in your life who you will remember as the one who left an impact on your life. One lecture of his changed you, or his charisma affected you, or the way he dealt with people, his actions left a mark on you. A scholar can make a community like nobody else can. Because when a scholar takes out of his time to struggle, to prepare, and to allow people to learn about the legacy of the religion, then you find that a community is built with the impact of that scholar. That's why in the 21st century, two key characteristics emerge which are vital, that every scholar has these characteristics. What are they? The first characteristic is the fact that scholars have to be approachable. You see, if a scholar is aloof, somebody who is not willing to talk to the people, somebody who is not willing to sit with the people, then you find that the majority of the people in the community then do not have anyone to look up to. The majority of the people in the community feel that that scholar isn't living what they're living. And that's why approachable doesn't just mean he talks with them. No. Approachable means that he even takes down from himself to laugh with them, to go out with them, to engage in dialogue with them. When one scholar plays a sport with the youth of a community, it can make a whole difference to the way those youths look at that scholar. And when a scholar brings himself to the position of talking about the current affairs which the people are facing, then you find that the majority of the community feel that that scholar is an approachable one. Why? Amir al-Mu'mineen says the role of the scholars is that they disseminate the knowledge which they have gained. There's no point gaining knowledge if you're going to hoard it all to yourself. A scholar should be someone who is willing to sit with those who are knowledgeable as well as those who are in need of knowledge. Number one. Number two, a scholar in the 21st century has to recognize that whatever he says is being examined, and that whatever he says, the whole religion rests on his words. Because now in this audience, if we were to say there are thousands of people sitting here, the thousands of people who would be sitting here are going to tell another thousand about what they heard. What that person says when he sits on the minbar of the Holy Prophet is of the utmost importance. Why? Because the people who are listening take from this. That's why you find it surprising that in the last year or two, certain scholars came forward with generalized statements attacking certain companions of Rasulullah in history. Be it from our school or be it from any other school, this is unacceptable. In Kuwait recently, one of the scholars of Al-Muhammad, a person who's sitting on the minbar of Rasulullah, came down on one of the companions. Whether the companion is good or not, history will decide. But when you examine that person, you as a scholar have to understand that what you say has a bearing on what everyone thinks. Don't be sarcastic about other people's beliefs. Don't be someone rude about other people's beliefs. Our sixth Imam, when he'd come forward with an opinion, what would he say? He'd say that is the ra'i of Ahl al-Madinah, and that is the ra'i of Ahl al-Kufa, and that is the ra'i of Ja'far ibn Muhammad. When he spoke like that, why would he speak like that? Because he knew that everything he says has a bearing until the Day of Judgment. Even in Ziyarat Ashura, there are certain names omitted for a reason, because there is an understanding which is far greater than the four walls. Some of the scholars today, when they speak, their mentality is only looking at four walls. They do not think that their words may go on the internet and affect the life of their followers in other parts of the world. When you sit on this minbar, there is a responsibility that number one, you disseminate your knowledge. Number two, you appreciate there are others in the world who do not agree with what you say. You appreciate there are others in the world who may not necessarily have even heard what you have said. The way you disseminate the knowledge is vital. That's why when you find people who are budding scholars, Islam says there are certain prerequisites which every scholar should have. The first of them is what? The first prerequisite is to be willing to struggle with knowledge. Why? Because you find many who give up. There are some who begin reading and then after a while just give up, thinking that becoming a scholar is something easy. The religions in the world don't respect the scholars because they learned something in one night. These scholars had to struggle with their wealth, struggle with their health, struggle with their education before they became what you know them as today. If you look in both schools in Islam, our school and the other schools, you'll find that the most revered scholars in some cases had to struggle against oppression before they achieved the status that they achieved. That's why when we call someone a mujtahid, if you look at the root word jihad, you will find that he has struggled through knowledge. A mujtahid is someone who has performed jihad in the area of knowledge. For example, you look at someone like Imam Al-Nasa'i. Our brothers in other schools in Islam have 6 books which are called the Sahih al-Sitta. Sahih al-Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, the Sunan of Abu Dawood, the Sunan of Ibn Majah, and you have the Sunan of An-Nasa'i and of Tirmidhi. Do you know what oppression Imam Al-Nasa'i went through out of love for Amir al-Mu'mineen? That the way he died was out of being tortured for his love for Ali ibn Abi Talib. How? Many in his time were coming forward and saying, what's your opinion about Muawiyah? He replied by saying that I don't have any hadith except the one which says that Rasulullah said however much he eats it will not be enough, as it does not fill the stomach. They said to him, what do you have about the merits of Ali ibn Abi Talib? He said, if I were to write from now until the day of judgment about the merits of Ali ibn Abi Talib, I would not be able to write enough. Because of this, he was tortured by the ruling authorities. Abu Hanifa was tortured because he spoke out against Bani Umayyah. Ahmad ibn Hanbal was tortured. You find Shahid al-Awwal, Shahid al-Thani, the authors of Al-Lum'a al-Damashqiyya as an example, were tortured because of their struggle for knowledge. A person does not become a scholar overnight. There has to be an immense struggle in their scholarship, number one. Number two, the second prerequisite is that don't be a scholar who's simply good at memorizing. Because there are many who can memorize. But there's a difference between a memorizer and a thinker. There are some who carry luggage, but they do not know what they are carrying. You will find that they tell the whole world to be religious, but their knowledge has not made them religious. They are good at disseminating knowledge. They are good at memorizing, but unfortunately their knowledge which they have gained doesn't affect them. In Islam, a prerequisite of an alim is that they contemplate that which they have learned, not just simply tell people what they have learned. Imam Al-Ghazali is renowned as one of the most spiritual of all scholars in history. Imam Al-Ghazali at a young age was extremely famous. When he would give lectures, there would be thousands in his crowd. Until he said, I realized I didn't have any knowledge when thieves came and stole my caravan. They said to him, what do you mean? He said, there were a group of thieves who came and stole the caravan I was traveling with. He said, normally I hide my notes in my sleeve. He said, these thieves came, they stole everything, and then they came to me. They said to me, Ghazali, give us what you have. He said, I have absolutely nothing left. They said, what's that you're holding on to there? He said, this is the notes of all my lectures. They said to him, give it to us. He said, no, take anything but this. They said, no, we want to take that. He said, as soon as they took my notes, I realized, Ghazali, you do not know anything. Why? Because you are good at writing and reading, but you haven't instilled that knowledge into your character. The knowledge cannot be complete unless someone instills sincerity in their character. There are many who are knowledgeable, but they may be arrogant. There are many who are knowledgeable, but they don't have any sincerity within them. Islam said the second prerequisite for an alim is that they contemplate the knowledge which they have. Don't repeat the same lectures for 30 years when people are living in 2008. When you find some who will repeat the same topic they discussed 20, 15, 10 years ago, you beg the question, has time not changed? Has there not been a time for you to bring new pieces of knowledge so people learn new things? A scholar cannot simply be a parrot. A scholar has to contemplate and ask that area which they are reading, does it affect the people or no? That's why when we discuss the verse in question, the verse in question discusses an alim who fell from grace. Let's see what it says. The verse is verse 176 of Surah 7 of the Quran. There is a difference of opinion as to who the verse is revealed about. One opinion is that the verse is revealed about Umayyah ibn Salt. Umayyah ibn Salt was known as one of the renowned poets of Arabia. He used to write poetry about God and the Day of Judgment, but he had one problem. He was always jealous of Rasulullah. And this didn't allow him to rise. One opinion is that the verse talks about how he fell because of his jealousy. That's one, but we reject that opinion. A second opinion is that it was revealed about Abu Amr al-Ansari, a priest who claimed to have converted to Islam but then fell, but we reject that. The third opinion is the strong opinion. What is that opinion? The opinion is that this verse was revealed about the alim of Bani Israel by the name of Bal'am ibn Ba'ura. Bal'am ibn Ba'ura was an alim in the time of Nabi Musa alayhi salam. He had one particular attribute. He knew Ismallah al-A'zam. He knew Allah's greatest name. Because as an alim in the beginning of his life, he had been sincere. The reason he went and memorized the holy books was because he wanted to preach to the people, not he wanted to achieve fame. What happened was, because of that attribute, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him what? He gave him knowledge of God's greatest name. Because you know God's greatest name is a secret. It's not anyone who knows God's greatest name. And God's greatest name allows you to even get to the level of kun fayakun. For example, you find many of the hadith which say, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes forward and says, Abdi ana al-hayy alladhi la yamut, ata'ani fima amartuk, aj'aluka hayyun la tamut. My servant, I am the living that does not die. Obey me in what I've ordered you, I'll make you the living that does not die. Abdi ana alladhi yaqulu li shay'in kun fayakun. My servant, I'm the one who says to something, be and it will be. Obey me in what I've ordered you, I'll make you say to something, be and it will be. He reached that level and he was known as someone who was a renowned scholar until Fir'aun came in. Fir'aun said to him, Bal'am, come to my house. So he came. It's rather a palace than a house. And so he came towards the house. Straight away Fir'aun, what did he do? Fir'aun said, guests, come, bring him fruits, bring him whatever he wants to drink. Also Fir'aun made some of his servants kiss the hand, because you know there are some ulama who enjoy. And so what you find is that on that level, he came and there were people who came and they were kissing his hand, kissing. He felt he was in a time of prestige now. What then happened was what? What then happened was that Fir'aun said next to me, he said, listen, do you want half of this that I have? He said to him, what do you mean? He said, you see all the kingdom that I have? He said, yes. He said, do you want half? He said, well, what do you want me to do? He said, use God's greatest name and finish Musa. He said to him, but Musa's the one who's bought this religion. He said to him, come on. The religion tells you of a kingdom later on, whereas I am promising you a kingdom now. How history repeats itself. Ammar ibn Sa'ad. The world, you could see it in front of you. But what Musa promises you is the hereafter. Take that which I'm giving you. He said, so you promise you're going to give me half this kingdom? He said, yes. Use your ilm of God's greatest name and go and perform the act. The hadith, what do they tell us? They say that he suddenly went on his donkey and wanted his donkey to march towards Musa. With which niyyah? The niyyah that he goes and kills Nabi Musa through the use of that name. But the Lord who gave you that name, when you lose your sincerity, takes it all away from you. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described him in the Quran, do you know how he described him? فَمَثَلُهُ كَمَثَلِ الْكَلْبِ. His example is like the example of the dog. إِن تَحْمِلْ عَلَيْهِ يَلْهَثْ أَوْ تَتْرُكْهُ يَلْهَثْ. If you come to attack it, it rolls out its tongue. And when you leave it, it rolls out its tongue. What did the Quran mean? As in, why did Allah discuss this scholar of the children of Israel in the comparison of the dog? فَمَثَلُهُ كَمَثَلِ الْكَلْبِ إِن تَحْمِلْ عَلَيْهِ يَلْهَثْ أَوْ تَتْرُكُ يَلْهَثْ. A dog, why does it roll out its tongue? Scientists say because of the fact that there is a lot of heat within the body of a dog. Therefore, when it rolls out its tongue, it looks for coolness, because it doesn't find any rest within itself. It's too hot. Allah wanted to show that when an alim is inclined to this world and not the hereafter, he can never find rest within himself. An alim who is inclined to this world and what this world offers and does not speak out against oppression, his inclination is for this world. Allah says, فَمَثَلُهُ كَمَثَلِ الْكَلْبِ. A dog, when you come towards it, if you attack it, it rolls out its tongue. If you leave it, it rolls out its tongue. Likewise with this alim. When it's the time for religion, he's restless. When it's the time for corruption, he's restless as well. And so he tried to push this donkey to go towards Nabi Musa. However much he would try, the donkey would not move. Until eventually he went ahead and killed the donkey he was sitting on. Why? Even one narration goes as far as saying, although there's a difference of opinion about it, one narration goes that Allah allows the donkey to speak out against that person riding it. The same Lord who allowed the ant to speak to Sulaiman allowed the donkey to speak out and say, how can I let you go and travel towards killing a prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? You think that this knowledge of yours was to be used in this way? Not a chance. Therefore, within this story, what do we find? Allah describes an alim who doesn't speak out against oppression and is simply there to look good and quote verses like the dog which is restless with the way it lives its life. That's why I remember at Safin, Amr ibn al-As and Abu Musa al-Ash'ari used this verse in an argument they had. Because you know at Safin, it reached the stage Malik al-Ashtar was 2 rows away from Muawiyah. He had nearly come and finished him. Ali ibn Abi Talib suddenly saw them putting the Qur'ans on the spears. Those within the army of Ali ibn Abi Talib, what did they say? They said that, look, Muawiyah's right, we should judge by the Qur'an. Ali ibn Abi Talib said, I'm the walking Qur'an. As in, I'm telling you who's on the right and who's on the wrong. They said, no, Muawiyah's right, we come to an arbitration. Who was chosen from the side of Ali ibn Abi Talib? Ali ibn Abi Talib wanted someone like Malik, but his people, unfortunately, they chose Abu Musa al-Ash'ari. That's why Amir al-Mu'minin said, give me one of Muawiyah's, I'll give you 10 of mine. Just give me one of his, I'll give you 10 of mine. They said Abu Musa al-Ash'ari. Muawiyah quite cleverly got Amr ibn al-As. When Amr ibn al-As came, he said next to Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, he did exactly what Fir'aun did to Bal'am. He said to him, and so when he kissed his hand straight away, Abu Musa al-Ash'ari is like, Amr ibn al-As is kissing my hand? Then he said, Abu Musa, you lead us in salah. How can I pray in front of you? So he suddenly started leading. Then Amr ibn al-As said to him, sit down, let's discuss this. Let's leave Muawiyah and leave Ali. And we ourselves go and announce this and we make our own leadership. Abu Musa al-Ash'ari said, so I leave Ali ibn Abi Talib? He said, yes, yes, leave him. And I promise you that I'll leave Muawiyah. They came out in the middle of the battlefield. Abu Musa al-Ash'ari came out. He said, oh people, I have left the path of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Amr ibn al-As came out and said, I have stuck to the path of Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan. At that moment, Abu Musa al-Ash'ari quoted this verse, فَمَثَلُهُ كَمَثَلِ الْكَلْبِ إِن تَحْمِلْ عَلَيْهِ يَلْهَثْ أَوْ تَتْرُكُ يَلْهَثْ. Your example is like that of a dog. If you attack it, it rolls out its tongue. If you leave it, it rolls out its tongue. Amr ibn al-As replied to him in a more destructive verse about alims. Do you know what he replied with which verse? Your example is like the donkey. مثل الذين حملوا التوراة ثم لم يحملوها كمثل الحمار يحمل أسفارا. You are calling me a dog and that I am restless? You are a scholar who is like a donkey carrying luggage. You've got Ali ibn Abi Talib in your army and you've come to debate with me? Look how he knows. He knows Ali ibn Abi Talib is more knowledgeable than all of them. Yet he tells him, do you know what Ali ibn Abi Talib is to you? He's just a book at the back of your back. He's a book. You haven't understood what you really have. Therefore you found that history showed us an alim who is a puppet of a government is an alim who is not worth respecting. And I tell you, were it not for the ulama, Banu Abbas and Banu Umayyah would never have survived. Were it not for corrupt ulama who were knowledgeable but never spoke out against injustice, none of Banu Abbas or Banu Umayyah would have survived. The real ulama in their time, they executed them one by one. But those who would pass every decision, they kept them sitting quietly. Harun al-Rashid was one day having a major problem with Yahya ibn Abdullah ibn al-Hasan. Imam al-Hasan had a number of great-grandchildren. One of them was Yahya ibn Abdullah ibn al-Hasan. Yahya fought Harun al-Rashid. When they fought each other, nobody was victorious. Nobody. And it reached a ceasefire. Harun al-Rashid wrote a contract with Yahya. He said that, look, I won't attack you anymore. Don't worry about this. I will leave you. When he got back to his palace, his ego overcame him. He said, I've just given a ceasefire to someone like him. Who does he think he is, me giving him a ceasefire like this? The reply at this moment, what happened? The reply at this moment, he started asking the scholars. He said, look, I've got a contract. They said to him, what's in the contract? He said, I've written that Yahya bin Abdullah bin al-Hasan, after this day, there is no punishment for him and no attack. So they said, what do you want us to do? He said to them, is there any way I can find a loophole and kill him? They said to him, what do you mean loophole? If you've made a contract in Islam, there is no such thing as a loophole. He said, I'm sure you can find one loophole. There must be one somewhere. None of them agreed until he went to the chief judge of Bani Abbas, Abu al-Bukhtari. When he went to Abu al-Bukhtari, he said to him, Abu al-Bukhtari, come here. I'd like to discuss something with you. He said, what is it? He said, Yahya bin Abdullah bin al-Hasan. He said, yes, what of him? He said, I want to kill him. He said, but what's the problem? He said, the problem is I've got a contract made with him that him and his people are in peace. The hadith says he took a knife out of his sock, kept a knife in his sock area. He took the knife out. He said, where's the contract? Gave it to him and he ripped the contract. He said to him, where's the contract now? He said, what do you mean? He said, can you see a contract? He said, no. He said, then go ahead and kill him. When a judge of the Muslim Ummah is willing to change the contracts of the Muslims in this way, it is not surprising that Banu Abbas continued in power, because this judge, instead of upholding the sunnah of Rasulullah and the teaching of the Quran, he thought more about where can I reach with Harun al-Rashid. In this world, he reached a high level. In the hereafter, is it worth it? No, it's not. Likewise with Bani Umayyah. Bani Umayyah needed the backing of strong religious ulama to make sure that their teachings were disseminated and that nobody could speak out. Hajjaj ibn Yusuf al-Thaqafi, were it not for two ulama, would never have been able to kill 100,000 people in his life. Two ulama of the religion of Islam, because of them, Hajjaj continued. One of them was Sha'bi. Sha'bi once made a hadith for Hajjaj. Do you know what the hadith was? Allah, when He makes you governor over a group of people, He forgives all your past and future sins. Have you ever heard a hadith like this? Does it make sense? When Allah makes you a governor over the people, He forgives all your past and your future sins. Which means what? Which means now, if Allah has made me a governor, if I go and kill 100,000 people in the prisons, Allah will forgive my future sins, as in He's not going to get in my way. And so you find Sha'bi was one. The other one was an alim from the people of Udad. The people of Udad were a tribe like Thaqif, like Quraysh. This alim, once Hajjaj was unhappy with him. When the alim came, he looked at Hajjaj. He said to him, what's wrong? Hajjaj said, I'm unhappy with you. He said to him, don't be unhappy with us, the people of Udad. He said to him, why? He said, because we have 5 things in us which are very good and no one can match us. Listen to these 5 and understand what happened. What are they? He said, the Khalifa Abdul Malik, we have never fought him. He said, good. What's the second one? He said, we have never named any of our children Ali, Hassan or Hussein. He said to him, what's the third one? He said, we ask our wives, do you like Abu Turab? If they do, we divorce them straight away. What's the fourth one? He said the fourth one is that it's common in our house to curse Ali ibn Abi Talib. What's the fifth one? He said the fifth one is that on the day Hussein died in Karbala, we remember it by sacrificing animals out of pleasure of that day. When an alim comes as a consultant to a khalifa and lives a lifestyle like this, it is no wonder that Muslims will not move forward, because an alim, the Quran says, إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهِ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاءِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the ulama are those who fear Him. When they make a decision, they think 100 times about making it, because there is a responsibility on their shoulder that people will come on the day of judgment and say, we listen to the alim. But when an alim is more concerned with the paycheck, or an alim is more concerned with his family rather than the community, then you find that those ulama will be the cause of the destruction of Islam. And that's why when one asks the question, how did Karbala happen? Karbala happened because of the ulama of Kufa and nobody else. The ulama of Kufa were the cause of Karbala. How? Muawiyah, a few years before he died, or a couple of years before he died, he knew that the years are now ending. He wanted to instill Yazid as Khalifa. But there's a problem. How can I pass Yazid through as Khalifa? He went and asked Mughira bin Shu'bah, and it's vital that we understand this area. He went to ask Mughira bin Shu'bah. He said to him, Mughira, I want to make Yazid Khalifa. Mughira said, if I were you, I wouldn't make the announcement now. He said to him, why? He said, because your son publicly is involved in frolics no one should be proud of. He said, what do you mean? He said, look at him. He sits and plays with the monkeys. He's a person who enjoys the revelry of the musicians. Women are always around him while you are telling people about staying away from such things. He said to him, if I were you, I'd wait a couple of years before announcing. He then went to Ziyad ibn Abi. When he went to Ziyad ibn Abi, he said to him, Ziyad, come here. He said, what is it? He said, I want to put Yazid in power. Ziyad said, if I were you, I wouldn't make the announcement now. Wait a couple of years. He said, why? He said, because the Muslim Ummah has people greater than your son. And they would ask, why aren't these people Khulafa? Why your son? So he said to him, what do you mean? He said, Abdul Rahman, the son of Abu Bakr, is alive. Abdullah, the son of Umar ibn al-Khattab, is alive. You have Abdullah ibn Zubair, is alive. Hussein, son of Ali, is alive. Why would people want to go for your son when there are others who are also sons of companions who have a better position? So Muawiyah said to him, then what should we do? He said, I'll tell you what you can do. Look for a hadith which was quoted by the Prophet and somehow stick Yazid into the hadith. He said to him, how? He said, look, I'll give you a hadith. He said, which one? He said, there's a hadith which the Prophet said that the army which goes to fight in Constantinople, Allah forgives them of all their previous actions. This army had already gone. But when Khilafah is in your hands, you could always make the claim that they didn't go. The army had gone, it had all finished. Constantinople had been done. But he said to Muawiyah, somehow let Yazid, there is another army going to Constantinople. It's the second army going. Somehow let Yazid go near the battlefield. Let a couple of Muslims see him and write that he was there. Then let him come back. And then you could say, Yazid, all his past actions you've seen have all been forgiven. What happened? Muawiyah brought Yazid. He said to him, Yazid, come here next to me. He said, what is it, father? He said, it's the monastery of your uncle Marwan. Marwan ibn al-Hakam used to have a monastery on the outskirts. He said to him, go to the monastery of your uncle Marwan and go there. Yazid couldn't go anywhere without his wife, Kulthum. She used to look after him wherever he traveled. And so what happened was, he used to go with her. He went in there and he just stayed in there. Muawiyah had said to him, get ready, you're going to have to make an appearance on the battlefield. The way they talk is unbelievable. Make an appearance. It's like he's gone to a soccer match or a basketball. Make an appearance and then come out. So he said to him, you got to make an appearance? He said, okay, I'll go. He took Kulthum with him. He stayed in Marwan's cabin without any thought of what's happening outside. As he said in his lines of poetry, tell those who are in Farqaduni. Farqadun is that area of Constantinople, Turkey. Tell those who are in Farqaduni that I'm enjoying myself with Kulthumi. He was enjoying what he was doing. The report came back to Muawiyah. When the report came back, it said, your son hasn't even gone out one bit. The battle has taken place. There's a plague. Yazid hasn't even gone out. Muawiyah quickly sent a messenger. He said, quickly go towards Yazid and tell him, all I have asked him to do is to leave his cabin for a few moments, go, make an appearance, then come back, and we can change the hadith that Yazid was there with Constantinople. Yazid went, he made an appearance, 2 minutes, can you see me? Yes. Like a photo shoot. You make an appearance and you go. He went there and then he came back out. When he came back out, Mughira ibn Shu'bah found out. When Mughira ibn Shu'bah found out, he then recognized that Muawiyah had gone with Ziyad's opinion and not his opinion. Mughira went to the ulama of Kufa. He said to them, do you want to be in a strong position? Now remember, this is near Karbala. It's near just before Karbala. He said, do you want to be in a strong position? They said, yes. He said, quickly go to Muawiyah and say, we want to give bay'ah to your son Yazid. When they came towards Muawiyah, they sat down near him. Muawiyah said, what is it? They said, oh, Amir al-Mu'mineen, we want to come and give bay'ah to your son Yazid. The answer of Muawiyah is quite unbelievable. Do you know what he said to them? He said, for how much did you sell your religion? They said 30,000 dirhams each. He said, what a fickle world. You sell your religion and you represent the deen. You tell people about how to practice when you yourself are the most corrupt people. When you have taken on this responsibility of knowledge, aren't you meant to act? He said, anyway, you've given your bay'ah and you've sold your deen. This beginning of ulama selling their deen, then later on became another alim in Kufa who sold his deen. And were it not for him selling his deen, Muslim ibn Aqeel would not have died. Who was it? Shuraih al-Qadi. Shuraih al-Qadi, or they call him in some books Qadi Shuraih, originally was of the people of Yemen. He was originally of the people of Yemen. He was originally Persian, of the people of Yemen, known as the Abna. He was of the Mawla, those who were non-Arabs living in Kufa. There were many Persians who were living in Kufa at the time. This Shuraih al-Qadi was a person who was a Mawla of the tribe of Kinda. You know, in Masjid al-Kufa there's a Bab called Bab Kinda in Masjid al-Kufa. That Bab Kinda, there is a tribe by the name of the Kindi tribe. He was one of their Mawlas. He was known as one of the most knowledgeable men in Kufa. Yet like Bal'am bin Ba'ura, it's one thing having knowledge, it's another being sincere. He had the knowledge to the extent one hadith says, Shuraih al-Qadi aqdal Arab. He is the most just of the Arabs. No one comes near him. He was a judge in the time of Umar ibn al-Khattab, although Imam al-Shafi'i differs on the opinion. He was then a judge in the time of Uthman bin Affan. Then he became a judge in the time of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Have you heard the story when the Christian takes Ali ibn Abi Talib to court? The Christian who took Ali ibn Abi Talib to court, when Ali ibn Abi Talib saw the shield which he said belongs to him, the Christian said, no, this shield belongs to me. In another hadith it says a coat of mail. Ali ibn Abi Talib said, look, I'm telling you, I know my battlefield clothing. That belongs to me. The Christian said, I'll take you to court over it. Do you know who was the judge? Shuraih. Shuraih was the judge. When he was taken to court, Shuraih looked at Ali ibn Abi Talib. He said, what is it? Ali ibn Abi Talib said, that coat of mail belongs to me. The reply that came was what? The reply from the Christian was, no, it belongs to me. Shuraih said to Ali ibn Abi Talib, do you have witnesses? Ali ibn Abi Talib replied, no, I don't. So Shuraih said, I award the case to the Christian. That Christian became a Muslim because of Ali ibn Abi Talib's answer. Because when that Christian walked away, he kept staring at Ali ibn Abi Talib. Ali ibn Abi Talib said to him, why are you staring at me? He said, today I saw God's justice on earth. I am a Christian. I live in a Muslim state. I have taken the Khalifa to court. The judge has given a decision against the Khalifa, and the Khalifa has walked away without insulting me or killing me. If Ali ibn Abi Talib is not God's justice on earth, then show me who is. And he became Muslim. He became a Muslim because of this incident. Shuraih al-Qadi was the judge of this incident. Imagine you are the judge of Ali ibn Abi Talib's Khalifa. You are on that level. You are on the most prestigious level. Even further than that, they used to say he was so just that his own brother, he put him in prison. Sometimes us, when our family is not religious, we keep it on the hush-hush. But when everybody else is not religious, we attack them day and night. Here, when his family member was not religious, he put him in prison. They used to say, Shuraih al-Qadi, when it comes to justice, nobody came near him. But also when it came to wealth, nobody came near him. When he had an envelope in front of him, he could change his decision. You know, in the time of Abdul Malik ibn Marwan, Shuraih lived until then. Abdul Malik ibn Marwan made him his judge. He gave him 10,000 dirhams and he bought him a house in Fallujah. You know Fallujah? In Iraq. He bought him a house in Fallujah. He said to him, live as you want to live. As long as you are my judge, I will keep sending the envelopes one after another. This Shuraih al-Qadi, the first crime he committed before Karbala was the killing of Hijr bin Adi. Hijr bin Adi, may Allah bless his soul. Those of you who've had the honor of visiting his shrine, that shrine which is there in Syria, I tell you, your life is not complete until you pay your respect to Hijr. Because you know that Hujr bin Adi, you know when his son was about to be killed, they asked him, what's your final wish before your son? What's your final wish before we kill you? He said, kill my son first. So which father wants to see the son die? He said, no, you've said to me that the Arabs, before they kill someone, they give a person a wish. Kill my son first before you kill me. They came and they executed his son. His son's buried right next to him. Then he said, now I am ready to die in the way of Allah. They said to him, why did you ask us to kill your son first? He said, because I could not bear the idea that I may die and my son may leave the love of Ali ibn Abi Talib. When he said this, it's a difficult moment. When he said this, he said, I could not bear the idea that I may die. He may have gone to another side. He, Shuraih al-Qadi, was one of the signatories. Kill Hujr bin Adi. Do you know what the excuse was? He said Hujr bin Adi was blaspheming against Allah. Why? Because Hujr bin Adi said, you cannot insult Ali ibn Abi Talib in the Friday prayer. So all of a sudden an excuse was written to Muawiyah that Hujr bin Adi is saying bad things about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he signed it, Hujr was killed. The next area he signed was allowing the killing of Hani ibn Urwa and Muslim bin Aqeel. Because, as you know, the governor of Kufa at the time was whom? At the time, Yazid was unhappy with the situation of Kufa. When Abu Abdullah was going towards Kufa, the governor of Kufa was An-Nu'man ibn Bashir. An-Nu'man ibn Bashir, the father-in-law of Mukhtar, was governor. He was too soft. Yazid was sitting in his palace in Sham. He had an advisor by the name of Sir John, a Christian advisor who used to advise Muawiyah. Yazid looked at him and he said to him, I've got a problem. Kufa is being controlled by someone very soft. What do I do? Sir John, imagine how the Khilafah had become. Your advisors are Christians in a Muslim Khilafah. Sir John said to him, the best thing for you to do is that you should go ahead and change the governor. He said, who should I bring in? He said, Ibn Ziyad. Yazid had a problem. Why? Yazid and Ibn Ziyad hated each other. Yazid and Ibn Ziyad hated each other. They were both in their 30s. They were both tall, good-looking men in Arabia, and the whole world was their kingdom. None of them liked each other. He said to him, Yazid said to Sir John, Ibn Ziyad? Yes. He said, why? He said, because if your father was alive, he would have made Ibn Ziyad definitely his governor of Kufa. Because Ibn Ziyad is like his father, Ziyad. They are strict when they become governors. Ibn Ziyad came into Kufa, he removed Nu'man bin Bashir. An alim of Rasulullah like Shuraih al-Qadi, when he sees you removing someone like Nu'man, isn't he meant to speak out? Nothing, no words, let it go. The second thing Ibn Ziyad started doing in Kufa, executing the Shia of Imam al-Hussein. I despise this statement that the Shia killed Imam al-Hussein. Number one, and I do not accept this statement which has come out from the pulpits that the people of Kufa, the Shia, let him down. This has gone on for too long, and for most part it's not historians who are saying it, it's just parrots. What do I mean? The Shia of Kufa were either being beheaded or were being put in prison. The real Shia, because the word Shia means what? It means the party of. It doesn't mean necessarily the one who believes the Imams are ma'soom. There were two types of Shia. The Shia of Hussein, who did not like Yazid, and the Shia of Hussein, who believed that he's the third Imam of Al-Muhammad and he's ma'soom. The ones who did not like Yazid and believed Hussein was just a good man, they left him. They're not the real Shia. A real Shia is the one who believes Abu Abdullah is the grandson who is carrying the message and was chosen by Allah to lead the Ummah. That's the real Shia. Ibn Ziyad went ahead, he started massacring people like Abbas al-Jadali. Sahat Kanasa in Kufa became a blood circle, a blood fest. Every true Shi'i who believed Abu Abdullah was a ma'soom imam out of 12 was being beheaded one after another. People like Mukhtar al-Thaqafi were put in prison. These were the real Shia. They were left in the gallows. The next person he executed, Ibn Ziyad, was Hani ibn Urwa. Hani ibn Urwa was one of the followers of Imam al-Hussein. Shuraih al-Qadi played the signature and let it go. Banu Madhaj, the tribe, came to Shuraih. They said to him, "Oh alim, you are an alim. Tell us, where is Hani bin Urwa?" He replied by saying, "Hani bin Urwa is alive and well. He's in discussions with Ibn Ziyad." Beheading a human being is discussions. But when an alim does not fear Allah, in contrast to the verse, إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهَ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاء, then you find them willing to make these decisions, until the last decision was the execution of Muslim ibn Aqeel. And when you find Muslim ibn Aqeel, Aba Abdullah praised this Muslim in a way which, when you listen to the words, you think there is no one like Muslim for Aba Abdullah. إني قد بعثت إليكم أخي وابن عمي وثقتي من آل بيتي. Muslim ibn Aqeel, he wrote down to the people of Kufa, I have sent to you, إني قد بعثت إليكم أخي, number one, my brother, وابن عمي. Hold on, Muslim ibn Aqeel is his cousin. Why is he called him his brother at the beginning? Because he felt like a brother to Aba Abdullah. He said, أخي وابن عمي وثقتي من آل بيتي. My brother, my cousin, and the one I trust the most from Al Muhammad. That is a high honor. ثقتي, ثقة, trust. Min Al Muhammad, all of them, he is the one I trust the most. He sent him. Even Rasulullah used to say about Muslim bin Aqeel, he used to tell his father Aqeel, Ya Aqeel, inni uhibbuka hubbain, hubban laka wa hubban li hubbi li ammi Abi Talib iyak, wa anna waladaka maqtulun fi nusrati waladi al-Husayn alayhi salam. He said, Oh Aqeel, I love you for two reasons. Number one, because of who you are. Number two, because of my love for your father Abu Talib, and that your son Muslim will be killed defending my son Hussein. Look at the praise. Yet when Muslim bin Aqeel came towards Kufa, he came at the beginning, there were thousands who were ready to support him. From 18,000 it went down to 4,000. When he came to lead Salah in the masjid, there was only 30 praying behind him. Some say there were thousands praying behind him. No, there was only 30 praying behind him. He went towards Bab al-Kinda. When he reached Bab al-Kinda, there were 3. As he left Bab al-Kinda, there was 1. As he started to walk in the streets like a stranger, there was no one. And let Allah not put you in a position where you are alone as a stranger, anywhere in the world. Where you are alone as a stranger in an area where your uncle Amir al-Mu'mineen used to be Khalifa. 20 years earlier his uncle used to be Khalifa. Now he's walking around the streets of Kufa not knowing where to go. And you know the thing that hurts the most? The conscience of Muslim bin Aqeel was with Aba Abdullah in Karbala. Because he thought to himself, I have told Aba Abdullah to come, now I may be the cause of the death of Aba Abdullah. So what did he do? He started walking around these narrow streets until he sat by this house. He sat alone there. He didn't know who was going to come and approach him. He knew Ibn Ziyad had already sent the orders to kill him if anyone finds him, but no one had found him. He was sitting there. A lady came out by the name of Taw'a. This lady, when she came out, she saw Muslims sitting there. She said to him, why are you sitting outside here alone? He replied to her, all I want from you is a glass of water, a cup of water, that's all I want. Can you imagine Al Muhammad? Wherever they were, the water would not come to them. He said, all I want is just a cup of water, nothing else. She went inside. When she went back out, she saw her daughter crying. When she looked at her daughter, she said to her, why are you crying? The reply came, because she looked at her first, she said to her, why are you crying? Has he made you angry? She said, no mother, he hasn't made me angry. She said to her, then why are you crying? The reply was, because I just asked him, why are you here? He said, I am a stranger alone in this town with no one to protect me. She said, mother, how could somebody leave someone like him as a stranger in this town? This lady came to him. She said to him, who are you? He said, I am Muslim ibn Aqeel. She said to him, who are you related to? He said, I am related to Ali ibn Abi Talib. She said, you are the nephew of my Amir? You are the nephew of Amir al-Mu'mineen? He said to her, yes. She said, then enter our house. She said, Muslim, you have to be careful. And there are people hunting for you. But I know what type of family you people are. I would never do anything. But she said to him, I have a son who I am scared of. If he comes back, he might tell the authorities. Muslim said, do not worry. I will just stay here. She said, stay here the night. That night he spent in tasbih, remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He knew that this was now coming towards his final night. The narrations say to us that night he spent in prostration towards Allah. Her son had come back home. When her son came back, he said, who is that? She said, that is Muslim ibn Aqeel. He said to her, Muslim has been in our house and you don't tell me? Do you not know Ibn Ziyad is offering a reward to kill him? He went towards Ibn Ziyad. When he went towards Ibn Ziyad then ordered Muhammad ibn al-Ash'ath to take 300 soldiers with him. Muhammad ibn al-Ash'ath went with these 300 soldiers. When he went with these 300 soldiers, a Muslim knew that this was now the time. All that was in his mind was the words, Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. These were the only words which were in his thoughts. They began to attack Muslim ibn Aqeel from each angle. From every angle there was soldiers up to 300 who started to attack Muslim ibn Aqeel. Yet Muslim was defending himself valiantly, to the extent that Muhammad ibn al-Ash'ath went back to Ibn Ziyad. He said to him, Ibn Ziyad, get me more soldiers. Ibn Ziyad said to him, what do you mean more soldiers? I've already sent many with you. He said, we are not fighting one of the greengrocers of Kufa. We are fighting the nephew of Ali ibn Abi Talib. They began to send the soldiers until they now had come to approach him. He had come out at that moment. There was no more one-on-one combat. Now they had surrounded him from every side. And they began to pelt him with stones on his head. He fell down and he went up again. And then somebody came and struck him with a bar on his head. He fell down. He tried to get up again. They had prepared for him a ditch. He fell in that ditch. Brothers and sisters, normally when somebody is tied with a rope, normally they allow you to walk. But they made his body roll across the grounds of Kufa. And they made the body of Muslim bin Aqeel roll across the grounds of Kufa. And they brought him towards Ibn Ziyad in his palace. When he entered, Ibn Ziyad said to him, may Allah curse you. Muslim bin Aqeel replied by saying, Ibn Ziyad, I only have 3 wishes. I ask you to look after them. He said to him, what are the 3 wishes? He said, the first wish is I have a loan which I owe someone. Please pay him back. He said, what's the second wish? He said, give me an Islamic burial. He said to him, what's the third wish? He said, tell Abu Abdullah not to come towards this way, because they are not with him, they are against him. Ibn Ziyad said, as for your wish for the loan, we will look after it. But the others, you will not receive an Islamic burial, nor will we inform Hussein. They took him towards the top of the mosque. Brothers and sisters, have patience at this moment. They took him towards the top of the mosque. When they took him, the executioner was about to behead him. He called out, Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. The executioner then executed him. His body fell on the grounds of Kufa. When he said, Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah, Aba Abdullah turned around towards those who were around him. When he turned around towards them, he turned around especially towards Sayyidah Zainab. When he turned around to Sayyidah Zainab, she looked at him, she said, Aba Abdullah, I just heard you say, wa alayka salam. Who are you saying this to? He replied, Muslim bin Aqeel has just been killed. Where is Hamida, the daughter of Muslim? Let me see her. When he bore the daughter of Muslim towards Ammar Abdullah, Ammar Abdullah, this 8-year-old girl, she came near him. Ammar Abdullah began patting her head. She looked at him and he looked at her. When he looked at her, he said to her, Hamida, my daughters are your sisters and my sons are your brothers. She said to him, Ya Ammar Abdullah, am I becoming an orphan at this moment? He said to her, why do you say this to me? She said, because you normally pat the head of an orphan. Normally you stroke the head of an orphan. Ya Ammar Abdullah, tell me about my father, Muslim bin Aqeel. Abu Abdullah, he looked towards her. What could he say to her? But brothers and sisters, there is a moment in this which is heartbreaking, and all of you will know it. Sukaina bint al-Hussein came near Hamida. Sukaina bint al-Hussein came near her. She sat next to her. When she sat next to her, she said to Hamida, do not worry. You are an orphan. I will be next to you. I cannot take seeing an orphan like this. Sukaina bint al-Hussein began to embrace her. She began to cry with her. I ask you, brothers and sisters, in this moment, Sukaina sees Hamida as an orphan. But when the horse of Abu Abdullah returned on the 10th of Muharram, without Abu Abdullah sitting on the horse, do you blame Sukaina when she said, oh horse, tell me where is my father Abu Abdullah?